All right, you guys ready to jump into this thing?
It's ready to
Let's do
roll.
it.
Welcome to this episode of the Prestige-ish Media Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lake, and with me live from the Impact Zone, it's Inbred Ed, Bird 33, Ed Pat Boggess. How's that alleged pronunciation go? I saw some
Oh,
Twitter back and forth on that.
yes, that's always a confusing thing too. So it's bogus is actually the pronunciation. But
Bogus
I,
is
I
what
get
I say.
bogus a lot, so you're good.
That is the most sensible thing. I used to think bogus, but bogus is
Okay.
funnier. Tom Chan, what the hell's going on with you?
Nothing much. I've always pronounced it as Boggess.
Yeah, you
Bo-
got one.
Boggs. So it's an extension of Boggs.
okay, that might help me. Are you peachy this week, Chan? I hope you're washing them because there's a big diarrhea thing going on.
Yeah, I had my fair share of Taco Bell, so let's see how it goes.
My real question is, how would Bono know if he got the diarrhea disease? He would have no clue. It's a normal Monday for him.
Supposedly it sits dormant for a week, and then that's when it really hits the fan.
Yeah, I've been doing pineapple, which that's cut, so hopefully that's okay. And then bananas seem like okay, but who knows?
I think saw it's really in 4 states or something like that.
I don't know.
But
There's like
yeah,
a
who
map.
knows?
There's a whole map that looks like the
Yeah.
bathroom when Bono's done with it anyway. That is all the bathroom talk we have for you today. We're gonna get into season 7, episode 3, Dark Side of the Ring. I forget the title of this, and I'm a bad co-host or host, but it's the self-destruction of TNA. Was it Jeff Jarrett and the TNA? Does anybody know the real title?
It's just
The
Jarrett and TNA or something.
yeah, and the battle for TNA, Jarrett in the battle.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. That sounds about right. I think that's what I had last week. Initial thoughts and a rating on this episode, Bird.
I was wondering how they were going to tie in from where they left off. They had a lot of time periods, so we didn't get a lot of current, like brand new TNA. We were pretty much all focused on Jarrett, which I thought he came off again fantastic, but I guess that was probably part of the MO there. And I'm a Jarrett guy, so I thought he came across well. But rating wise, I was very pleased with it. As a TNA fan, like I said, every bit of 8 for the whole series. I could argue that back and forth a little bit, but I thought that was well done.
Okay, Tom, what about you? Thoughts and a rating?
Yeah, same here as last week. I'd given an 8. Still a lot of new. I didn't know about this stuff, but like learning on the insider portion of it is like really interesting to me. So I thought that was like good stuff to hear.
I'm gonna swerve you guys here. That's why we can't have nice things. I'm gonna go 7.5. I didn't think it was as meaty, and I do think 3 episodes is a lot of Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
That I think we could have got a little bit more TNA, like you said, both literally and the wrestling organization. So Bischoff, like obviously Hulk Hogan's passed away. He was breaking up about in the beginning about how Hulk felt that his brand had power right until he died. It seemed pretty close to the end till that LA crowd turned on him. The WWE crowd turned on him at different things, but it seemed like he was making a comeback with the Real American. I guess the real turn was the whole Trump dog and pony show or the Republican National Convention. That was a bridge too far. Jokingly, the N-word was less offensive to people than him tearing his shirt at a Republican National Convention. But still, towards the end, I think the American beer and it hadn't quite got off, but it seems like the wrestling, the amateur wrestling, pro amateur wrestling thing that's going on is getting a little traction. Any thoughts just on the brand appeal of Hulk the last, say, 10 years of his life, Bird?
Obviously, you're getting mixed stories from everybody. To me, he's the greatest. I don't know if you're going to say he's definitely not in-ring wrestler, but as far as pure wrestling, whole scope of business and everything, he's by himself up top. That's talking Flair, Austin, everybody else's arguments. They wouldn't be here without Hogan, in my opinion. Now, it's probably hurt him negatively the last 5 to 10 years, obviously, on some things. Didn't bother me personally on some things, but I think that star power was gone just a little bit. But when they signed him in TNA, I think it was an okay signing. But like Jarrett said, he wasn't a top dog there. But to Dixie, he was that name. And that's what they kind of needed, some names at that time.
Any thoughts from you there, Tom?
Yeah, the last 10 years of Hulk, it's like everybody knows it's up and down, but one thing that Hulk does is keep himself in the news. So that's one thing to look at it for his last 10 years, whether it's good or bad, but it still makes him relevant. As far as him and the TNA thing, I think I knew about him being like his own creative, but I didn't know how much he did have a creative control over all of TNA, so to speak. But I thought it was cool to have Bischoff, a lot of Bischoff in there. So it was like a different side of the voice of TNA. But I thought it was pretty good overall that way.
Yeah, and I don't know the title of this either. Once again, great host. But I think there was like a death of WCW Dark Side of the Ring, right? There was some version of that. And then there was the Hulk Hogan Netflix doc more recently. I thought they actually did a better job of covering Hogan in TNA. They showed some of the more extreme wrestling he was doing, and I thought they covered the real crux, which was he was in no position to wrestle. It seemed like Dixie wanted him to wrestle. Jeff thought he could be more of like an ambassador. I can't remember if he said mascot or I'm thinking that. I feel like he said ambassador,
Yeah.
but it felt like mascot to me. But I think there's some combination of that without the creative control that makes sense, or I think you just had to remove Russo and put in Bischoff or a Cornette and a Bischoff. But it was very clear to me from all the other previous documentaries, they don't cover it well here. There was no way for Hogan, Bischoff, and Russo to work together. Do you disagree with that anyway, Bird?
No, I will say, I think I said it last couple of episodes as well. Bischoff, to me, I think he's a super smart guy. I don't know if I'm a big actual fan of his, but I respect him. He comes across real well in all these documentaries, in my opinion. Don't think he's trying to be negative towards anybody. He's being honest from what he sees on the Hogan side. Of course, there wasn't much involvement with Ruth, but I think Bischoff was a good crutch for Hogan to have and somebody that was somewhat level headed and knew the business. Whether he knew it at that time, I wasn't against that then.
Yeah, I think he's a good piece. He does a good interview. I think like what you said more, like I think and I don't think he has the ability to do this, but I think if he's part of a writer's room with Vince, Heyman, and him, as it was designed with Vince being a little bit different with schedule and location, I think he could be very effective there, effective as an executive. I think he's effective as a mouthpiece in these shows. But I think him being sole creative, he just keeps trying to ride that one trick pony in a different way than Russo. I think the way he rides it is more reasonable than Russo, but it's still the same thing, but different. Going back to the well, where if I were to talk about one of your guys, Bird Heyman, he has adjusted to a corporate lifestyle. It's not always the same thing. Yeah, if you give him creative control by himself, he's going to do a Bobby Lashley Rusev wedding angle. He's going to go back to his greatest hits too. But he seems to have actually molded in and contributed in the background better than those two have been able to do later on in his career. Any thoughts from you there as I throw kind of that triangle of you of specifically Bischoff and Russo, but kind of background Heyman there, Blaha?
One thing that I just doesn't make sense to me is how Russo and Bischoff don't get along because they have an eye for getting as many people watching you as far as entertainment wise is concerned. You would figure those two would work together better.
Yeah, I think to me it comes down to the way it seems like it happened with Bischoff. What Jarrett's saying happened to him is what happened to Bischoff and WCW when Vince Russo filled that power vacuum. Once that didn't work, they reversed it, screwed over Russo, put in Bischoff, and so it got so nasty. And then also Russo was leveraging Jarrett at that time, I feel like. So I don't feel like, I know they just wanted to do the TNA thing, but to your point, unless you see the other thing, it's hard to understand what's going on here. Any comments from you there, Bird?
Taking back what you said on WCW 99, 2000 WCW was so horrendously bad, but we kept watching it anyway. And you had a change of power. I don't think Russo or Bischoff was great at taking a backseat to power. Russo, especially, and Blaha mentioned my guy Heyman. I think he's adjusted well as an older guy at the times. He likes current things. He's always been a pop culture dude. And it seems like you mentioned on corporate side, he can take a little more of a backseat, even though he's still got a top light on him. Just the whole Russo Bischoff combination, and then it spread through years later into TNA didn't seem the best.
Yeah, and I think that's what I thought was funny with Russo is the worst of WCW is what he started TNA with, and
Yeah.
it didn't work the first time with a
Yeah.
lot more money and a better TV spot. It's not going to work this time. And even the culture had changed a little bit from that 97 to 2000.
Yeah.
It looked a little different 2003 on, say.
Right.
Yeah, I they start with kind of this Dixie ultimatum and how that kind of affected. It was weird. D'Lo seemed to be her biggest supporter in the previous sections, and he kind of jumped the shark there. There's nobody there that didn't say she didn't lose the respect of the locker room. We got a lot of awesome Kong this episode. Maybe a couple segments too many for my liking. I thought last episode was maybe enough. Not she couldn't be in this episode, but we didn't need more Kong, in my opinion. Tom, what were your thoughts on the Dixie like addressing the locker room, but in public almost?
I don't think I remember ever hearing about that. I don't think I remember reading about it either. So that was just surprising to me. And I was kind of half paying attention at first. And then when they showed the video, I thought it was like at the storyline. But then when they started saying, oh, she recorded it and then played it in the show, and people were pissed off about it, it's like, holy shit, was that bad?
Yeah, Bert, were you watching at that time, and what was your reaction?
Yeah, and again, I'm surprised they showed that video even for this speech, which is just so weird. And the looks
Yeah.
on some of these guys' faces. I think if you would have done that maybe in the 90s, say WCW, a lot of those guys would have probably walked out. But I guess these guys didn't have that option, maybe that tier. And just the way she presented, of course, they're just sitting there like school kids and they're like, what do you do? And their faces are all the same.
She even said, you better work for somebody else.
But I think she still wouldn't have let them out of their contracts, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And it does remind me of a famous WCW mistake. And I don't know if it was before or after Russo. Good God Almighty. I've mentioned Rusev once and I'm going down bad road alley. But no, if you remember, that's kind of how Malenko and Ray and Benoit left. They made kind of an ultimatum and said, whoever wants to leave can leave and we'll release you of your contract. And that was kind of that to me, that was the real death of WCW. That was the final nail in the coffin. And so you do it here, but without any real teeth, I don't think, because I don't think she was going to let people out of their contract. That's what it kind of reminded me of, even at the time when I was reading it in the dirt sheets, if you will. But I definitely wasn't watching. The Panda attorneys want Jeff to come back, allegedly, but it seems like they just want to keep him under their thumb so he doesn't pull a global force like he does later. They put him in charge of live events and international. Live events is eventually what WWE put him in right before Vince left. They cover some, but not all of that. And the international, that was it Raw on Kong? What was that, Bird?
Ring King. It was an Indian promotion, and I thought due to population at that time, they thought they had something.
Yeah.
Apparently they didn't, because they had all kind of dreams for this, and then it went into Global Force, which didn't really do much either. Global to me was like a lower tier, older NWA kind of style that they thought was going to be brought back, but didn't really fizzle out into much.
Yeah, and I just remember hearing it. I know Vince obviously went out and got the great Khali, and so everybody was trying to exploit that market in different ways. But once again, I still think it was probably Dixie feeding it, but always when I'd read the dirt sheets, it'd be like, oh, they're very good on the international side. I'm sure it's like Meltzer with, his thing he does now. It's, oh, you don't really know what they're really doing there. Did you hear about any of that stuff? Tom, we kind of talked about last week. You were kind of out of it, so this is kind of mostly new info from you, but any feedback there?
Yeah, I didn't really pay attention to TNA back then. So even like trying to read the dirt sheets about it, I would always skip that portion for me. So it just didn't really matter to me back then because I was just really WWE guy. But
no, what was always shocking to me, Bird, was like Ferreira being involved in TNA, and he was part of also what was so dog with the WC. And so I'm like, how is this even happening? I'm assuming it's just the Russo deal. But do you have any Ferreira takes? I don't know much besides, I just know the JR stuff was really awful. Even as a guy who's not as high on JR now as I used to be, just never really. It seemed like it was as bad as the evil JR thing was in WWE. It was just WCW's version of that. What's your take on Ferreira, Bird?
Yeah, I don't know tons other than what just the basics. We know that he was a dude. They were always linked together. I don't know if he was, say, meaner than Russo, but yeah, he had a lot of digs, especially to JR, and he'd go that kind of route. And then he was tied into all that penis stuff and all this the stuff that Russo was into. I don't know whose pocket that came from, but same kind of vibe it seems like. And I know he wasn't well liked. It doesn't seem like when you mention his name nowadays, but I don't have a whole lot of intel on really what he was or what he's really truly about.
Got it. So they mentioned giving Hogan the keys to the brand. They thank Hogan for getting Mr. Anderson, which he wasn't a Hogan guy, best I know, but maybe they crossed paths during Hogan's SmackDown run, maybe. I thought that was a weird move for Ken Anderson at that time anyway. But other than that, what's your take, Bird, on the six-sided ring? Obviously doesn't seem like a good idea for them to have gotten rid of it. From my side watching, I had just thought, was it AAA or who did that six-sided ring first? Because I would see it on Telemundo.
Yes.
So it isn't the first place most people, in my opinion, saw it. People would see it on Telemundo back then. You actually flip the channels through, so you'd come across it. And so for me, it just kind of seemed like a cheesy gimmick. But for you who was a fan, and I could see it being cool now, but at the time, that was my thing. I had already seen it on Telemundo, seemed cheesy. That's how I felt at the time. What was your take on it at the time?
I could definitely see cheesy elements to it, but I thought it was unique to TNA. And I always wondered, thought it was a little crazy as if I was a wrestler. Of course, I'm not. Doesn't seem the most beneficial ring for them. Seems like you could get hurt a lot just based on step formations and what you're normally used to. But as a fan watching on TV, it was something different. Again, that's what TNA kind of had to be. They were never, oh, we're the number two. It was never obviously anything close to that, even though they wanted to present it as that. But I thought it just give a alternative kind of style. And
Yeah,
I could see the cheesy.
Tom, what was your take outside looking in, not really watching, but just screwing
I thought
around?
it was like their identity. I at first I thought when I first saw it, I thought, oh, they're ripping off. But then later on, it was their identity, so it was kind of dumb for them to move it. But then Bischoff did make a good point: is that if that's your identity and you don't use it, then what's the point of having it? They don't really brand it as, yeah, we got the six-sided ring, the only wrestling league or federation with the six-sided ring or something like that. So I can see both sides of keeping it and not keeping it the way they weren't using it. But for me, it was their identity.
Is that accurate, Bird? Because I have a feeling that Bischoff and Hogan's TNA knowledge isn't much deeper than mine and maybe was closer to Tom's. Did they do anything unique as far as in tag matches or with cages? I know they did the X Division thing above the ring, so that's one thing they did. But did they do anything else that you're aware of from your time watching?
Outside of that, probably not. And I'd say back to the Hogan thing, he probably knew zero about TNA. I can't imagine. He's definitely not wild. It's kind of obvious to a lot of us. Not that he had to, but I think people expect everybody to watch everything on that kind of level, and they're probably not. Especially somebody like Hogan. It's who's these jokesters over here? If they're gonna give me a paycheck, I'll listen to you. But maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I guess if I were to revisit, like, there's stuff you could do with it, like Bischoff said, if you were going to use it, I think it would fit in better now if done right. The problem is, like you mentioned, if you have wrestlers switching brands, training, like going on indies, coming back, it doesn't seem like the safest thing. And then secondarily, I thought I heard kind of similar to like how the old WW, and I think they still are, but maybe not as bad as they were, but how the old WWE rings were pretty stiff. I thought Hogan might have mentioned in some doc that like he took his first, but it could be like a Taker, oh, you got me, brother thing. But I thought there was some feedback that maybe that ring wasn't super comfortable to take a bump in either. Do you got any knowledge on that, Bird?
Do not, but I would say at that time, if Hogan had an opinion or wanted some kind of change, I think they would definitely listen to him as far as whether he was a creative guy or not. He wanted it right for him. Storyline, professionally, individually, is what it is there. But I don't have anything out of the ordinary that he would have done that, but wouldn't shock me.
First
I
leg
do.
drop. Oh, it got me, brother. Go ahead.
That's a good
I do
line.
remember hearing an interview with AJ Styles. I forgot where. Maybe it was like on Van Vliet or something like that, where he mentioned that the first time he took a bump in a WWE ring after that big signing, he was like, "Oh my god, this is like jumping on a pillow, pretty much."
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say we get the crowd chanting six sides, also something both your moms are known to chant. I thought the funny thing was like Russo being like, "Oh, now you understand, bro. He is just so looking to pass the buck on anything he did. I think that was his worst segment of this episode. And he takes on that, or do you understand now, bro, Tom?
It was weird editing for him during that point. I think it was like 10 seconds of him shouting, like real shouting, and then it cut to him saying, "And that's the fall of TNA." It's
He's like, no, bro, it's BS. Bird, your take on the Russo.
This episode for Russo, I would say, I don't think he came off as much of an idiot. Like I said, I don't hate Russo. He's just a different dude, and he's kind of stuck in his weird, outlandish kind of ways and doesn't mesh well with teams, it doesn't look like. But to say he came off bad, good, nothing changed, he still says he's going to have probably that same opinion generally to wrestling fans for the end of time.
Bro's gonna bro. So, Bird, this head to head thing, I was aware of it at the time. I might have flipped a channel, I might have not. What were your thoughts on them going head to head, both at the time and now looking back on it?
Not a great move. I get the ballsy aspect of it. At the time, I was kind of excited to kind of flip between two things. You had that dynamic going like you had in the 90s, which was excellent. But did I think it was competition? No. TNA did have some pretty good names there. Again, they were older WWE names typically. And they had a lot of young talent that they didn't probably rise at that time when the TV was doing the Mondays, but probably not the best move.
Were they still doing 2 hours at that time? They haven't mentioned it since they hired Cornette for 2 hours. Thought it was a little weird they didn't mention ROH or
Yes.
Cornette because I think it's both directly relative is the most direct competitor to them during this time. But I guess when I was watching this, I just thought this actually could have been not a bad idea if they would have staggered it, like starting an hour before, an hour and a half before, or an hour after, hour and a half. So you've got a half hour to an hour of overlap, but then you have your own time. Aside from that, I think that might have been a better strategy. Tom, any thoughts from you? Were you aware that was even going on? And now looking back at it, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think I was really watching wrestling that much back then, so I wasn't aware they actually went head to head like that. But everybody else made a good point. Who was against Bischoff is like, we didn't have the money for it, so why try and go against a big dog when you don't have the money for it?
Yeah, I get it. Or they could have tried to pick off. I don't remember if at that time SmackDown was on Sci-Fi on Tuesdays, but maybe that would have been an easier target to go head to head. Any final
Yeah.
thoughts there, Bird?
I think TV in general has just been a downfall of TNA's just consistency. They've had a couple good stations and then it gets to rolling good and then they lose funding. Then they get on something like Access that nobody gets, things of that nature. That's just been wonky. Last 10 years, it's been kind of off and on bad TV, even at that time when they were going head to head. Probably better situation than now, obviously, than AMC, which isn't bad, but they've had some interesting stations over the years that didn't help.
An interesting thing in that the first episode was maybe the most watched TNA episode ever, allegedly, according to Bischoff. I'm not sure. D'Lo said it looked like the fly or a fly on the ass of a rhino. Jarrett kept talking about Hogan was just moving the chess pieces to get his next raise. I guess it was a 4-year run. That seems long to me. I would have guessed 2 years. Did you feel the full 4 years, Bird?
That seems a whole lot to me as well as 4 years. But again, I think Hogan was there, I don't know how selfishly, but probably a lot, just concerned on his storyline, make sure he was taken care of, his brand, what he can do outside of wrestling with that, and that they don't present him as some Joe Schmo. I don't think he really, not that he didn't care about anybody else in the company, he just didn't probably associate or do much with their storylines or have an opinion.
Now, the Jarrett versus Kurt angle with Karen, I thought this was one of the best things TNA did.
Yeah.
outside looking in, I didn't watch the product, but I would definitely read on that because I'm like, what the hell is going on? I think this is when wrestling is at its best, when you don't know what's real and what isn't sometimes. I feel like Jeff and Karen were maybe playing the "oh, it made us look bad, bro" angle, but that's the angle. It got the attention, and everybody seems like they respected both of them a lot. I'm kind of surprised we didn't get any Kurt from this, but maybe based on the reputation of some of the earlier seasons of the Dark Side of the Ring. I know some people just kind of have bowed out. I think another one that's done that is JR after, I think it was the Flair one. He kind of bailed, but it would be interesting to hear what Kurt's opinion of this story is. Obviously, you weren't necessarily watching, Tom, but I would think this angle would have at least got your attention, like old Samoa Joe. Did you have any context that this was going on?
Yeah, I just know about Kurt Angle in TNA from what I remember back then, but I don't remember reading about this angle at all. But yeah, if I was watching somewhat, then if I saw that happening, I definitely would have been tuned in just to watch, see what was going on.
I imagine you'd have tuned in for Karen Angle or Karen Jarrett. Bird, what was your take on this storyline? And then also just him pulling Jarrett into this. But for Vince Russo's side, I think this was one of the better angles. Now, yes. I do get Jeff being upset that this is what Dixie leveraged to get him out of the company, and now they're using it as an angle, but it was probably one of their best angles. Your thoughts, Bert?
Very fun angle. Again, I like what you said about Russo. If you got to give him credit, I'm not above giving him some credit. I thought he did very well. When you blur on the edge of reality, you have some realism there. A lot of the fans didn't know if they were together or not together, I'm sure, at that time, what was going on, but on TV, pretty neat stuff. I thought it was well done on both sides. Seems like Jarrett and Angle were both pretty intensely into it as far as the storyline goes. But yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and it reminds me in a different way, but that time period for Karen is like a Stephanie McMahon type of figure. Yeah. That person that people love to hate but don't mind seeing on TV. Maybe not to that level and not to that audience, but for that audience, maybe. I thought the funniest thing I saw with that, because I didn't catch it other than in the dirt sheets, but seeing Angle with the axe at that wedding, I was like, that's the minute Russo booking. Yes. I'm like, where's the midget in the trash can? But yeah, I thought the axe was pretty funny out of context. No clue where it was going, but funny from the outside.
I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah.
I do think the midget storyline is going to go, it's going to have a lot of legs for us. I think I'm going to a local show tomorrow night, a midget show, so it's going to be a blast. So I'm looking forward to it.
They're back, baby. You can say it now, just not on TikTok, apparently, or Vice somehow. That's where Vice draws the line on their productions and standards. So we get a little bit on that Sting versus Jeff Jarrett thing. I think obviously if you paid for that main event, you're disappointed. But it had the potential not to be the worst thing that ever happened because it just gets you talking about it. It's something people talk about still today with TNA. How many people talk about things in TNA? Were you watching then? And what was your take on that, Bird?
I was watching, probably wasn't getting the pay-per-views at that time unless we had a bunch of us or something.
I was going to say, if you spent your hard-earned shekels on that, you're going to be pissed.
Yeah, of course, I was watching the weekly pretty regularly, but yeah, they had some potential with that. Just didn't quite make to what it could have been on paper, in my opinion.
And did you hear about that at all, Tom, or had you seen the videos, or what was your take just seeing this segment here?
Yeah, when that happened, I remember that's one thing I do remember reading about was that happening, and then seeing the video of it. At first, when I remember when I watched it at first, it's like, hey, Jeff Hardy didn't really look that bad, but then later on, you could see them doing the Montreal Screwjob pin on him. So yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
How they kind of, I don't know if it was D'Lo or who said it, how they even let him, or maybe it was Jarrett, how they even let him get to the ringside to even have the match.
Yeah,
and,
that's why.
I thought Hardy came across very well as far as in the documentary, admitting to his wrongs, but it was pretty jacked up there on that video.
Yeah, my only side take on that is, okay, so that's the end of the pill run, but the end of his last WWE run was a little questionable. I think some things happened in AEW.
Yeah.
Maybe that was alcohol, but one, however he gets clean and whatever's best for him in his life, support and would pray for, obviously. But just a little questionable is like, oh, that was the end of it. And there's maybe some other stuff that happened afterwards, who's to say. But yeah, I guess my take was it was like D'Lo and that other producer that was on there kind of going through it. And then my understanding was Jarrett was at the hotel and Russo's like, bro, get over here now. And then
Yeah, that's crazy to me how so involved Jarrett is in that after his match he wouldn't stay
Yes,
in the
that as well. Same
yeah.
thing.
I could understand it if you were forced out. I could understand just being like, it's not my issue, not my circus, not my ponies kind of thing, monkeys, whatever. Throw an animal out there.
Well,
And a
I
ring.
mean, it's like their big pay-per-view. You would figure that he'd want to stay behind and just see how everything goes.
Yeah, they don't really cover this here, but is Victory Road like the TNA Triple Mania, WrestleMania type deal, or what was their biggest pay-per-view?
Their probably biggest, I'd say, is Slammiversary.
Okay, so Slammiversary is a big one. There's like the King of the Mountain thing, or do they do
A couple
that
other things, but
Slammiversary?
King of the Mountain, I loved that. They've done away with that, but I thought that was a real neat thing that Jarrett was behind a lot of that. But I like that whole storyline and deal there.
Yeah, really weird they don't address that. Really weird. They like literally not more than a sentence on the X division. To me, that was as big of a deal as the six-sided ring almost, or yeah, I don't know.
I mean, like I knew TNA back then as AJ Styles, Chris Angel, and Samoa Joe.
Yeah, not a lot of AJ Styles, honestly. Not a lot of was it Suicide or Suicidal or Homicidal? Who was the video game character that became a wrestler? Maybe played by TJP Bird. Who was the big X Division guy? Was it Suicide?
Suicide.
But like that's one of the first characters created out of a video game. Maybe you'd think that'd be relevant. So I think a little weird. I get that the goal was a 6-piece and it turned into a 3-piece. They decided to turn it into a Jarrett 3-piece. I think it could have been like a 1-episode Jarrett, 1-episode TNA as a whole, and 1-episode whatever, Dixie maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there, but a lot of stuff left on the table from somebody that doesn't know dick about TNA.
Yeah.
And I can pull this stuff out of my bag of tricks here. I'd like to know a little more about Dirty Dutch's side of this thing, like what his take was on some of this, because I think he would be a good middle ground between Russo and Cornette. So anyway, a little bit of that, not enough Cornette this episode for sure. I could take it down another 5.5 for that.
Speaking of Cornette, a funny one on the newest podcast, just a quick tidbit since we're talking TNA. He talked about the first 2 episodes and talked specifically about Scott D'Amore, and him and Last are both like, what the heck happened to this guy's face? He looks younger now. Who is this guy? Just how Corny says it. He just did look different on TV than he would imagine that.
That's funny. I thought it was also funny that I did think Jeff Hardy took a lot of responsibility, but then he's, Bischoff was treating me like trash. Like, how's he supposed to act in the ring in kayfabe? What's this supposed to look like? There's no blueprint. I did think it was funny that they said they thought he might walk it off. Like the music,
he's almost there.
The music would hit and he'd just start
sweat it out.
But I also thought it was funny that Jarrett had no clue what addiction was. But did we just spend 2 episodes? Now's the worst time for my drinking. Now's the worst time.
Yes.
So that leads us into Hogan leaves. Dixie gets booed. Jeff says he never would have done something like that. I think this is the part they don't resurface that line here, but I would have if I was producing the show of like, how Jarrett and maybe Russo were protecting Dixie a little bit. This is where you see some of her protection run out. Maybe seems like people are booing her at this. Is this kind of the end of the line from Dixie from your side, Bird, or that's how they played it? But I feel like she still hung around like an Owen Nugget a little longer.
Yeah, she hung, I guess, somewhat playing the heel, even though that wasn't her aspect, but the fans turned on her. But the last probably 10 or 15 minutes, it was just so quickly pushed together, and it was more the comeback treatment story for Jarrett, which was really good. But they started talking Dixie and Russo, and then out of nowhere, it's just, we're back to this. Jarrett's a hot mess again. Now he's back, and now he's got a great story, which I wasn't disappointed with, but I wanted a little more of the Dixie side at that time, but we didn't get that.
You humiliate her, bro. Humiliate her. Humiliate her, bro. Humiliate her.
For sure.
Any take from you there, Tom?
Yeah, I never heard about how when Hogan was leaving, I never saw that clip before. So her doing the Jeff Van Gundy to Hogan, that was pretty surprising to me to have that on TV like that.
Yeah, the leg clinging, not a good look, I don't think, ever really, many ways. It's a good heel move if you're, but not if somebody's really leaving. If it's a fake
Yeah.
storyline, maybe you could do it, but not if it's real. I thought it was interesting, Jeff trying to weasel his way back in with Toby Keith. That didn't work. He did the global force thing. To your point, Bird, that was kind of just, to me, I hate this expression, but I'm going to use it because it fits here, like the fart in the wind or whatever you call it. Did you have any knowledge of global force at all on your side, Tom?
No, not at all. And they didn't really talk about that much either. What happened with him and Toby after they tried to merge?
Yeah, I thought it was nice that Toby was at least trying to help him out, but it doesn't seem like it went anywhere. Any thoughts from you there, Bird?
Yeah, same kind of deal. Seemed like they were, at least to the talking point, he was very interested as far as, I don't know if he knows his game or not, but he seemed enough to be the backer. But of course, when Dixie wanted to still be where she was at, that was apparently the cog in the wheel there that kind of kicked him out. And just depends how that came off on TV. I don't know how well Toby Keith's run would have went, but I think he would have been an okay money backer. But I was hoping we'd get I wanted a little bit of Billy Corgan stuff, but that was a little bit after some of that, so we didn't get any of that.
Yeah, that is interesting. We get the Canadian buddies from Anthem. I thought that was more because it was like they also owned Access TV, and I thought Mark Cuban was somehow involved in Access TV. I'm sure that's a big part of why they even did it, was for the TV aspect on every side. Doesn't really get mentioned at all. So that's that, other than Anthem purchasing it, but that piece of the puzzle is missing. And then this is where Jeff really falls off the wagon if we haven't been here before. Apparently, when he came back, it was the darkest he's ever been, the Jeff Jarrett Revenge Tour. I guess he says he was pissed because he thought there was going to be money and there was no money. So I can understand that. They put him in like a day treatment, a 6-day treatment. It seems like that's when D'Amore takes power. I don't know if you know that side of it, Bird. But then after that 6 weeks, he goes to Canada, starts drinking on the way in, on the way out. He's drinking at AAA Mania, throwing tortillas. What do you remember of this, Bird? Because I feel like we know the Scott Hall stuff. We know the Jeff Hardy stuff. I missed this part of the death spiral. What did you know about all this?
Yeah, I don't think at that time, like, it was pretty cool or pretty neat seeing the videos of all that stuff. I always heard what he did down there and all that stuff, but I've never probably seen much video action, to be honest, of Jarrett down there in Mexico or any of that kind of stuff. Is it old school heel heat? Probably. That's probably a little more. I don't think it came off as well as he probably intended. Plus, he was probably screwed up some. But again, you're kind of fighting that same line. He's clear, he's clean, and all that stuff. Next thing, he's worse again. You're rooting for the guy, but it's just the same song and dance. But hopefully, that last treatment, the end story, is kind of where he seems like he's at now.
Anything from you there, Tom?
Yeah, like you mentioned, like I don't remember hearing about Jeff and his drinking problem at all. I don't think I ever read about it in a dirt sheet or anything like that either, but didn't really pay attention that much back then. But it's cool. I thought it was really good that they mentioned how they called WWE. I don't think he was like on a Legends contract or anything like that, right?
No, was not.
And they just brushed. I mean, they mentioned it, but then that was it.
Yeah, so once again, early on painted as vengeful, spiteful, Vince McMahon, biggest piece in the world. This wellness program, they also mentioned he was in there 56 days.
Their program, yes.
Yeah, and so the fact that all happened, then they offer him the Hall of Fame right after, and eventually they don't mention it, but Vince gave him live events towards the end of his run, and then when that fell through, I think with Vince leaving, Jarrett left, and then once again, that's how he kind of ended up in AEW. Was they saw Jarrett doing live events there and is like, hey, and guess what? When Dixie had him come back for live events, that was probably a good background for the international. That as much as that seemed like not great, it's more modern experience because I feel like on Cornette, I heard him talk about Jarrett booking rings like 30 years ago in the late 80s with his dad or something, but like really that experience would have come then that would be useful in his job now with AEW. What's your take on ignoring the WWE side of it? Or, I mean, they do say it's like a godsend, but they don't really go a lot. And they obviously set it up as a negative in the beginning. What's your take on this, Bird?
Yeah, toward the end segment, the Hall of Fame time and all that, they didn't really elaborate hardly anything other than just a very quick feel-good story, and that really wasn't touched on. I thought once he went to AEW, there was just a small time period. He was fairly over for there for a couple months. The fans took to him like they were surprised. He even said it how they took to him when he probably was just meant to be there for a little bit of time, and he actually made him a somewhat decent character for that kind of level. And then after that, he's an older guy, but he still looks good, still can play the heel card. I thought he came across well there. And then they just went to another topic. So they kind of did a lot of bouncing during those last 15, 20 minutes, I thought.
Yeah. Tom, who do you think? So there's an old SNL sketch with it's Jimmy Fallon, I think, where they talk about cork soaking. Who do you think soaks Tony Khan's cork more? Jeff Jarrett in this episode or Bird on our podcast? Any more thoughts on the WWE stuff? And then I did think the Owen Invitational, him being able to be a part of that was probably the highlight. Tony Khan talking about him getting over his addiction issues with the dilated eyes of a nighttime raccoon, I also thought was interesting. Any takes from you on the end of that there, Tom?
Yeah, like Bird said, pretty much it was just jumping around, talking about Jeff in AEW, and then jumping to Jeff talking about Owen. Like before this, I didn't know those two were like that great of friends. Have you heard that much about it, Bird?
Are you talking
Oh,
Jarrett and Owen?
I had at
Jarrett
the
and Owen.
time. Yeah, I had at the time. He was pretty broken up about it at the time.
Yeah.
But
I wish we
so
would have had put some dates on the screens, just so we have a little bit of a time frame.
Right,
Because you're
right,
jumping,
right.
even though a lot of us were watching at that time, but still would be nice to have a little bit of something to pinpoint where you're going from here to there and where you're at.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
no, I agree with that. They may need us to pinch hit on the producing here.
But then again, like you said, if it was 6 episodes, that probably would have been a lot more.
Yeah, but so I guess the end here, I did think that, bro, if Jeff Jarrett still had the company, who knows what would have happened, bro. If he ever gets another Fed, Russo can't wait for Jarrett to buy the Juggalo wrestling deal. But what I thought was interesting, like, I don't understand. So Anthem still owns it technically.
Yeah.
WD bought or produced some of their TV and gets paid for it, or TKO. There's something there, Bird, maybe you know. And then they definitely don't mention how the crossover at WWE. I do think it's funny. If it should have died a million deaths, and without Jeff Jarrett, that would have happened. I think that's all fair. But do you have an understanding of like the Anthem WWE TKO relationship at this point, Bird?
So it's a working relationship, but I'm not sure what entails. I'm sure if WWE puts their foot down and wants somebody used over there wrongly, they're obviously going to have that power because TNA will probably take any help they can get. And it's nice, I think, that they have a little bit of that crutch from WWE. But I'm not sure how much Anthem say against TKO or anything of that nature. And then you have Carlos Silva's the TV president, but I don't know what his actual role is outside of being the TV guy that you see representing the company all the time. So it's a little wonky to me. I don't have a whole lot of details on the true ownership of what's going on there currently. I watch every week and I can't tell you.
That's funny. Yeah, there was the guy before that, I think it was like Tony Saccone or something like that, was the president. He fired Scott D'Amore, which seemed like D'Amore had created the relationships with WWE. Now was your boy Tommy Dreamer in charge of creative after D'Amore, or what was the recent Tommy Dreamer Dog and Pony show, Bird?
Him and D'Amore were pretty close to my knowledge, and he was there for quite a while. I'm not sure where he was at tier-wise, but when they would run the ending credits up until Dreamer got canned out of there, he would be listed as a producer. along with Hunter Johnson, used to be Delirious and ROH, who Corny absolutely loves the Booker. So those same names have been there for quite a while, but I'm not sure if there's any disconnect between
So,
Dreamer and
so,
D'Amore or not.
so Russo or Dreamer was a producer and or co-creative.
Yeah,
And then why did he
but
get let go recently?
I knew all that he said, she said kind of stuff with old stuff where he's saying to the females came out. I would say that
Okay.
was probably part of that, some indie things. Plus, they're wanting to cut some spots and all that. So something wonky happened there that's really not out. But
Yeah,
I'm a
gotcha.
big Dreamer guy, but he's not coming across lately in the best of light to some people. So
Well, I know they use that kind of stuff to get D'Amore out, but he was like openly dating a woman that I thought was a wrestler there at one point. So just weird though. Any thoughts on current TNA, Tom? Any desire, care, just seeing the WWE crossovers? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really watch them that much nowadays. I would say, from a casual point of view, this whole three-part series of Jeff Jarrett and TNA is to put Jeff Jarrett's name back to the TNA side, because for me, I would think TNA back then was more of a Dixie thing. So I think that's more of them just saying TNA back then was a Jeff Jarrett thing rather than people thinking it was Dixie thing.
It's a shame. I assume Anthem lended some footage, but it would have been nice to see them get a little bit more juice for their squeeze out of this thing. Because I think they could have really set up a redemption arc for TNA as much as they did Jeff
Yeah,
Jarrett.
yeah.
And hey, here's where you can watch the shows, and here's what's
yeah.
going on now. Maybe we see a little Elena Black. Maybe we see a little Santino. Maybe we see a little Santino's daughter. Who's to say? But they definitely
But
could
then
have got.
again, this is like a Vice TV thing, so I guess you know.
I get it, but
Yeah.
God, why would you lend the footage or I don't know what the
Yeah,
level of participation was, but I would have participated any way I could have to just get a little bit
Sure.
more. Hey, here's
yeah.
we
Yeah.
exist, and it's going
And
pretty.
and looking back, I'm a Jarrett guy, but it would have been better to run just a straight team, even though a lot of that wasn't maybe dark, but it would have been nice just some of those big names Blaha was talking about and some of the angles we all know. Just throw a little bit piece of that in. I think they could have done maybe not like a gut piece and have some negative dark things there, but maybe it doesn't have to be.
And I think Karen Jarrett comes out looking pretty good, and I feel bad for her going through what she went through with both Kurt and Jeff. God, she's almost a saint after seeing
Yeah.
that, sticking with him. I would think after what she had already been through. I think good on her. What was the preview for the next episode, Bert? I saw Samoa Joe. Maybe I should ask our resident Samoa Joe expert, but
I didn't see I didn't see a preview, so I don't
he's
know what's happening.
he's bloody. He was bloodying somebody up, so I figure you know what's coming next. What do we got on deck for next week, Bird?
Yeah, so we got the Samoa Joe Necro Butcher melee scene, and it's spectacle.
Oh,
I'm surprised they made an episode of this. Maybe we got a whole lot more with it. You can watch it on YouTube. It gets pretty brutal. So we'll see where that goes and how many parts or what they can do with an episode.
Was this an indie fight gone awry? Was this in TNA? What was this in, Bird?
I believe Indy. I'm not sure of the location or anything. I never quite saw the actual full match until probably recently when all this dark side talk came. I've seen bits and pieces, but now you can see the whole thing pretty easy, whether you're into that or not. But just seeing the Samoa Joe we know get down and dirty, and then Necro Butcher, who's just a kind of a wild man deathmatch guy anyway. So it should be an interesting episode. I can't see this episode getting a lot of ratings, but maybe I'm wrong.
Hey, Tom,
is it?
one.
I was going to ask, was it as bad as the mass transit incident?
No,
Without
different
somebody
elements, I
dying,
guess.
but
Yeah, that guy probably didn't really know a whole lot, and these two guys just it turned bad quick, basically.
So you're unfamiliar with this, Tom.
yeah, I have not heard. I've heard about Necro. I haven't seen anything about him before, so this will be an interesting watch.
Yeah,
I will
and
say I don't know if
go
it's
ahead.
worth bragging about or not. Necro Butcher's a West Virginia guy, so I don't know if that's a feather in the
Okay,
cap.
there we go. Country roads, take us home.
And he's still doing those matches today, and he looks awful. But man, just quite a story that dude has.
Yeah. So once again, I'm a WWE guy. I have no clue what this is. Some things I've heard of, some I haven't. So I will not watch the match till we watch the show. We'll be back next week. Tom is a big Samoa Joe guy. Are you watching? Are you watching next week from a trash can? Is that how you'll be coming to us? Dude, that's really what Oscar's been doing in that thing this whole time?
That's great.
Don't give Russo the pencil for Sesame Street. I tell you
That's
that.
one upside down.
I don't know if you remember the Dave Chappelle skit where they kind of make fun of it.
Yeah, a little bit like that, but with Tom next week. Coming to us live talking about Samoa Joe.
Hey, first one in. What's up?
What's going on, dude?
Oh, looking forward to it.
Did you have a recital yesterday, or what was up?
I had an Italian festival meeting. We have a monthly meeting, so it was one of my Wednesday meetings.
Okay. So you help actually organize it there, huh?
I'm part of the board there. I type all the notes and the minutes and do some other things.
I love that. When do you guys normally do it? Like, when's the
It's,
festival?
It's always Labor Day weekend. So the first year was the first year I was born. So it's been going on since 1979. So
Okay.
our small little area, it's a pretty good festival.
That's pretty cool. And it's in Chinston?
It's in Clarksburg, about 15, 20 minutes away.
Okay, cool. You guys get the jump on the Mothman Festival. That's always about 2 weeks later.
I know you want to do that one. I have no really interest in it, but I need to check it out just to say I've been there.
Yeah, we got to do a meetup there sometime with Bono at least. He's always good to spend the money for no reason. Chan, what's up?
What's going on?
Welcome to the Impact Zone. I was telling Tom earlier, if LeBron goes to the 76ers, you guys, the Celtics, should fall the way off for the rest of your lives. That's a worst case scenario.
I just don't think they'll be that good. Yeah, they'll be good on paper, but
they can sit Embiid all year just playing 15 minutes a game. Yeah, and he's just got to play for 2 months. I think that's the scariest situation outside of AD going to Golden State, if that happened first. But the odds of Curry, LeBron, and AD all staying healthy aren't really good. But if you just got to have Embiid stay healthy, he can literally sit the whole year. So I don't know. That's the scariest, I think.
He's kind of on the back burner, as crazy talented as he is. You got those other 4 guys ready to go, and they're young. Maxey's real deal. Maxey's here.
I think the real thing with LeBron is, though, and I was listening to some Laker podcasts this week, is his whole thing since he came to the Lakers was like, get other ball handlers. I don't want to be as involved. And now he's like, I want to be involved in it. It's like the way the Lakers were using him last year before the injuries was actually probably the best case to keep him healthy. So is he going to allow himself to take a back seat? And if he is, then what was the problem in the first place? So we'll see. But he's going to milk it till the cows come home. I'm not sure who's worse, Russo or...
Bro.